Standing in my childhood bedroom, staring at someone else's belongings scattered across my desk, I realized my mother had officially replaced me. Madison, her precious stepdaughter, had moved into my space while I was away at college. My graduation photos, gone. My awards stored away. Even my bed had different sheets. When I confronted Mom, she shrugged and said Madison needed more room for her art supplies. That moment, I knew exactly whose side I would take when Dad finally served those divorce papers he had been hiding. Hey everyone! Before we dive into this family revenge story that will absolutely shock you, let me know where you are watching from in the comments below. If you are ready to see how family betrayal led to the most satisfying justice I have ever witnessed, smash that like button and hit subscribe, because this story has more twists than a soap opera, and trust me, you will want to see how this all unfolds. My name is Aurora, and I had always been Daddy's little girl. Growing up in suburban Phoenix, I thought our family was picture perfect. Dad worked as a successful architect. Mom was a real estate agent, and I was their only child who excelled at everything from debate team to tennis. That illusion shattered when Dad remarried Helen when I was 16. Helen brought her daughter Madison into our lives, and suddenly, everything changed. Madison was 2 years younger than me, artistic where I was academic, rebellious where I was responsible. Mom immediately gravitated toward her, claiming she understood Madison's creative spirit better than my rigid perfectionism. I watched helplessly as Mom began treating Madison like the daughter she never had while I became an afterthought. The favoritism started small. Mom would buy Madison expensive art supplies while telling me I needed to earn money for my own college textbooks. She attended every single one of Madison's art shows, but missed my debate championships because they conflicted with Madison's schedule. When I got accepted to Stanford with a partial scholarship, Mom's response was lukewarm congratulations, followed by excitement about Madison's latest painting winning a local contest. Dad noticed too. I caught him having heated discussions with Mom behind closed doors, their voices rising about fairness and priorities. He would try to compensate by taking me on special father-daughter trips, but I could see the strain in his marriage growing stronger each day. Mom accused him of being jealous of her relationship with Madison and claimed he could not understand artistic temperament. During my sophomore year at Stanford, I came home for Thanksgiving break to find my bedroom completely transformed. My academic trophies were boxed up in the garage. My Stanford pennant was replaced with Madison's abstract paintings. My childhood diary was missing, and when I asked about it, Mom claimed she had cleaned out old things to make space. Madison had moved into my room permanently, complete with an expensive easel and professional lighting setup that cost more than my entire semester's textbook budget. "Aurora, you are in college now," Mom said dismissively when I protested. "Madison needs a proper space for her art. You can use the guest room when you visit." Visit. In my own home. The word stung like a slap. That Christmas dinner was when I overheard the conversation that changed everything. I was getting something from the kitchen when I heard Dad on the phone in his study speaking quietly to someone who sounded like a lawyer. "She has completely checked out of our marriage," Dad was saying. "Aurora does not even feel welcome in her own home anymore. Helen treats that girl like she is more important than our actual daughter. I cannot watch Aurora suffer through this anymore." My heart stopped. Dad was considering divorce. "I need to know about custody arrangements," Dad continued. "Aurora is almost 21, so that is not an issue, but I want to make sure Helen cannot touch Aurora's college fund or her inheritance from my parents. She has already spent thousands on Madison's art supplies while telling Aurora to take out student loans." I crept closer to the door, my heart pounding. "Start preparing the paperwork," Dad said. "I want Aurora to have every advantage when this goes to court. Helen has made her choice about which daughter matters to her. Now she gets to live with the consequences." The next few months were torture. I watched Dad grow increasingly distant from Mom while she remained obliviously devoted to Madison. Mom planned elaborate birthday parties for Madison, complete with professional photographers and catered meals, while my 21st birthday was celebrated with a grocery store cake and a rush dinner because Madison had an art opening the same weekend. The breaking point came during spring break of my junior year. I arrived home to find Mom had converted Dad's home office into an additional art studio for Madison. Dad's architecture awards, his diplomas, even the model buildings he had crafted as a student, were all packed away in the garage next to my belongings. Dad needed to downsize anyway, Mom explained. Madison's art is taking off, and she needs professional space. Your father can work from the kitchen table. I found Dad in the garage that evening, sitting among our boxed belongings, holding one of his architectural models with the expression of complete defeat. "She does not even see me anymore," he said quietly. 25 years of marriage, and I have become invisible in my own home, just like you have. That night, Dad showed me the divorce papers he had been preparing. The lawyer had done extensive investigation into Mom's finances, and what we discovered was shocking. Not only had Mom been draining our family savings to fund Madison's increasingly expensive artistic pursuits, she had also taken out a second mortgage on our house without telling Dad. She had purchased a car for Madison, funded a trip to Europe for a artistic inspiration journey, and even paid for Madison's college applications to expensive private art schools. "She spent your college fund," Dad said, his voice hollow. "$40,000 I had been saving since you were born." She told Madison it was for investing in her future as an artist. The betrayal was complete. My own mother had stolen my future to give Madison everything she wanted, while treating me like an unwelcome guest in my own childhood home. When the divorce goes to court, Dad said, "I want you to testify about everything you have witnessed. The favoritism, the financial abuse, the way she has pushed both of us out of our own lives. Are you prepared to do that?" I looked at him, thinking about every missed birthday, every dismissive comment, every time Mom had chosen Madison over me, without hesitation. "Yes," I said, "I am ready to tell them exactly what kind of mother she really is." The next few weeks became a careful dance of gathering evidence while pretending everything was normal. Dad's lawyer, Patricia Morrison, was a sharp woman in her 50s who specialized in high-conflict divorces involving financial fraud. She explained that we needed documentation of every instance of favoritism and financial misconduct if we wanted Mom to face real consequences. "Emotional neglect is hard to prove in court," Patricia explained during our secret meeting at her office. "But financial fraud, misappropriation of funds, and hiding assets, those are crimes that judges take very seriously." I started documenting everything with my phone. I photographed the credit card statements Dad had found showing thousands of dollars in art supplies, travel expenses, and equipment purchases for Madison. I recorded conversations where Mom discussed Madison's bright future while dismissing my academic achievements. I even found emails Mom had sent to her friends bragging about Madison's artistic talent, while never once mentioning my acceptance into Stanford's graduate program. The most damaging evidence came from Mom's own social media. She had been posting constantly about Madison's art shows, calling her "my talented daughter" and "the artist of the family." Meanwhile, her Facebook page had exactly 0 mentions of my academic achievements from the past 2 years. The contrast was so stark that even strangers in the comments were asking about me. "Where is Aurora?" One of Mom's old friends had commented on a post about Madison's gallery showing. "I have not seen any updates about her college career." Mom's response was telling, "Aurora is fine. She is very independent and focused on her studies. Madison needs more support right now because artistic careers are so challenging." Patricia was building a case that Mom had not only emotionally abandoned me, but had also systematically diverted family resources intended for my benefit toward her stepdaughter. The second mortgage she had taken out was the smoking gun we needed. She had forged Dad's signature on the paperwork, using the money to purchase Madison an expensive studio space in downtown Phoenix. "That is fraud," Patricia said grimly. She could face criminal charges for this, not just divorce court consequences. While we gathered evidence, I had to maintain the facade of a normal family relationship. This meant enduring more painful moments of being sidelined for Madison. During Easter dinner, Mom spent the entire meal discussing Madison's acceptance into a prestigious summer art program in Italy, gushing about how proud she was to support such raw talent. When someone asked about my plans for graduate school, Mom changed the subject within 30 seconds. Dad and I developed a system of silent communication. A raised eyebrow meant, "Are you recording this?" A slight nod meant, "Yes, I got it." We were building an airtight case against the woman who had betrayed both of us. The hardest part was watching Madison remain completely oblivious to what was happening. She was not a bad person, just a teenager who had been spoiled beyond belief by a woman desperate to play mother to someone more exciting than her academic daughter. Madison had no idea that her art supplies were purchased with my college fund, or that her studio space was financed by illegally mortgaging our family home. Sometimes I caught Dad staring at Madison with a mixture of pity and resentment. She had become the unwitting weapon Mom used to destroy our family, and while Madison was innocent of intentional wrongdoing, her very presence had cost me my mother and Dad his marriage. "She has no idea what Helen has done to get her those opportunities," Dad said one evening as we watched Madison excitedly show off her latest painting. "That girl thinks Helen is just being generous, not realizing it is coming at your expense." The turning point in our strategy came when Patricia discovered that Mom had been lying to Madison too. The art program in Italy that Madison was so excited about Mom had told her it was fully funded by a scholarship, but the truth was that Mom had maxed out 3 credit cards to pay the $15,000 tuition. Madison was going to return from Italy to find her family destroyed and her beloved stepmother financially ruined. "This changes everything," Patricia said. "Helen has not just betrayed Aurora and your husband, she has set Madison up for a devastating fall, too. When this comes out in court, Madison is going to realize that every opportunity she thought she earned was actually bought with stolen money." We decided to wait until after Madison left for Italy to serve the divorce papers. Dad wanted to spare her the initial drama, and honestly, I was grateful. Watching Madison's world crumble along with Mom's was going to be painful enough without having to see her immediate reaction. The night before Madison left for her art program, Mom threw her an elaborate goodbye party. She hired professional photographers, ordered expensive catering, and invited everyone she knew to celebrate Madison's incredible achievement. I stood in the corner of our living room, watching Mom play the role of proud mother to a girl who was not even her biological daughter, while I had become invisible in my own home. "Aurora, can you help serve the appetizers?" Mom asked dismissively, treating me like hired help at Madison's farewell party. As I carried trays of expensive catered food that was purchased with money stolen from my college fund, I smiled, knowing that this was the last time Mom would ever have the opportunity to humiliate me. In 72 hours, she was going to be served with divorce papers that would expose every lie she had told and every dollar she had stolen. Dad found me in the kitchen during the party, both of us watching through the window as Mom posed for pictures with Madison like they were mother and daughter. "Are you ready for this?" he asked quietly. I looked at my father, this good man who had watched his wife systematically destroy their family for the sake of playing stepmother to someone else's child. "I have been ready since the day I found my bedroom turned into an art studio," I said. "Let's take her down." Madison left for Italy on a Tuesday morning, bubbling with excitement about her summer program that she believed was fully scholarship funded. Mom cried at the airport like she was sending off her own daughter while I stood there, knowing it would be the last normal moment our family would ever share. Dad waited exactly 24 hours before having Patricia serve the divorce papers. He wanted Mom to have one full day of believing her plan had worked perfectly before everything came crashing down. I was supposed to be back at Stanford for summer classes, but I had secretly arranged to stay in Phoenix to watch the fallout. Dad had rented me a small apartment near campus under the pretense that I needed internship housing. In reality, we wanted me close enough to witness Mom's reaction, but safe from her inevitable explosion. Wednesday afternoon, Patricia's process server arrived at our house while Mom was hosting her weekly book club meeting. The timing was deliberate and brutal. Mom's friends were all sitting in our living room drinking wine and discussing their latest romance novel when a legal courier knocked on the door with a manila envelope that would destroy Mom's carefully crafted image. I was parked across the street in Dad's car, watching through binoculars as the scene unfolded. Mom answered the door with her usual confident smile, probably expecting a package for Madison. When the process server identified her by name and handed her the divorce papers, her face went completely white. "Helen Morrison, you are being served with divorce papers and a civil fraud complaint." The server said loudly enough for the entire book club to hear. "You are required to appear in court on the date specified in these documents." Mom's book club friends went dead silent. I watched her fumble with the papers, her hands shaking as she read the front page. The color drained completely from her face when she saw the fraud charges listed alongside the divorce petition. "Fraud," she whispered. But the process server was already walking away. I called Dad immediately. "It's done. She just got served and her friends heard everything. She looks like she's about to collapse." Within minutes, Mom's book club had cleared out, leaving her standing alone in our driveway, holding the papers that detailed every crime she had committed. The civil complaint was devastating: forged signatures, misappropriation of funds, theft of educational savings, and fraudulent mortgage applications. Patricia had been thorough. That evening, Mom called Dad's phone repeatedly, but he had blocked her number. She tried calling me at Stanford, not knowing I was actually 15 minutes away at my temporary apartment. When I did not answer, she left increasingly frantic voicemails. "Aurora, honey, there has been some kind of mistake," her first message said, voice shaking. "Your father has filed for divorce and he is making horrible accusations about money. I need you to call me back right away so we can clear this up." By the fourth message, her tone had completely changed. "Aurora, I know you are involved in this somehow. Your father could not have found those financial records without help. If you think taking his side is going to benefit you, you are making a huge mistake. Madison and I are a family now, and you will regret betraying us." The mask was finally slipping. For the first time, Mom was admitting that she considered Madison her real family, not me. Dad and I met with Patricia the next morning to review Mom's response. She had already hired her own lawyer, a sleazy-looking man named Rick Donovan, who specialized in defending white-collar criminals. According to Patricia's contacts in the legal community, Donovan's strategy was always the same: claim emotional manipulation and play the victim. "She is going to argue that Aurora manipulated her father against her," Patricia explained. "Donovan will paint Helen as a devoted stepmother who was trying to help a struggling artistic child, and Aurora as a jealous daughter who convinced her father to punish Helen for showing love to Madison." I felt sick. Even facing criminal fraud charges, Mom was going to try to make me the villain. "What about the forged signatures?" Dad asked. "The second mortgage she took out without my knowledge." "Those are facts that cannot be disputed," Patricia said confidently. "But Donovan will argue that Helen believed she had permission or that she was acting in the family's best interest. The key is going to be Aurora's testimony about the pattern of favoritism and financial priorities." That afternoon, Mom showed up at Dad's architectural firm, causing a scene in front of his colleagues and clients. Security footage from the building showed her screaming in the lobby about ungrateful daughters and family betrayal before being escorted out by building security. "She is completely unraveling," Dad told me that evening. 25 years of marriage, and I am seeing who she really is for the first time. The next blow came when Patricia's forensic accountant finished analyzing Mom's financial records. The theft was even worse than we had initially discovered. Over the past 3 years, Mom had diverted almost $90,000 intended for my education and our family's future toward Madison's artistic pursuits. The Italy program was just the latest in a series of increasingly expensive investments in Madison's career. She bought Madison a professional camera setup worth $8,000, the accountant reported. She paid for private art lessons at $200 per session twice weekly for 18 months. She even purchased a car for Madison and registered it under Helen's name to hide the expense from your father. But the most shocking discovery was that Mom had been planning to leave Dad anyway. Her laptop revealed emails to a divorce attorney from 6 months ago discussing how to protect Madison's interests in the event of a marriage dissolution. She had been strategically moving money and assets, preparing for the day when she would leave Dad and take Madison with her to start fresh somewhere else. "She was never trying to save the marriage," Patricia explained. "She was planning her exit strategy and setting up Madison as her ticket to a new life. The timing of your discovery just forced her hand before she was ready. The cruelest detail was that Mom had been documenting Madison's artistic achievements, obsessively building a portfolio that she could use to apply for grants and scholarships in Madison's name. She was not just stealing from our family to fund Madison's opportunities. She was positioning herself as the devoted single mother who had sacrificed everything for her artistic daughter's success. "Look at these grant applications," Patricia said, showing us printed emails. She has been applying for need-based assistance programs claiming to be a struggling single mother supporting a gifted child. She was going to take your father for everything in the divorce while simultaneously playing victim to get additional funding for Madison. Dad stared at the documents with an expression of complete betrayal. She had this planned from the beginning. Madison was not just her replacement daughter. Madison was her escape plan. That weekend, we received the call we had been expecting. Madison had somehow found out about the divorce and was cutting her Italy program short to come home. Someone, probably one of Mom's friends from book club, had contacted her with the news about the fraud charges. "She is flying back tomorrow," Dad said after hanging up. "Helen convinced her that we are trying to destroy their family out of jealousy." I felt a knot in my stomach. Madison was about to walk into a war zone with no idea that every opportunity she thought she had earned was built on stolen money and forged documents. "When she gets back and realizes the truth about where her funding came from, it is going to destroy her," I said. Dad nodded grimly. "Helen set that girl up for the same kind of betrayal she gave you. The only difference is that Madison does not know it yet." We were about to find out just how far Mom would go to protect the fantasy family she had built at our expense. Madison's return from Italy was a disaster from the moment she stepped off the plane. I watched from the airport coffee shop as Mom embraced her like she was returning from war, while Madison looked confused and overwhelmed by the chaos that had erupted in her absence. "Nobody explained anything to me properly," Madison said, her voice carrying across the terminal. "People are saying there are fraud charges, that Aurora is trying to destroy our family. I do not understand what is happening." Mom immediately launched into her victim narrative, painting Dad and me as jealous conspirators who could not handle her love for Madison. But Madison was not the naive teenager she used to be. The art program in Italy had exposed her to worldly people and complex situations, and she was asking harder questions than Mom expected. "How exactly did you pay for the Italy program?" Madison asked, as they walked toward baggage claim. "You said it was a scholarship, but my program director mentioned something about a family contribution of $15,000. I watched Mom's face go pale. She had been caught in her first direct lie to Madison, and there was no way to deflect without admitting the truth about the stolen money. "The scholarship covered most of it," Mom stammered. "I just had to supplement a little bit from our savings." "Whose savings?" Madison pressed. "Dad Rick is saying you took money from Aurora's college fund. Is that true?" The question hung in the air like a bomb waiting to explode. Mom had spent 3 years convincing Madison that she was a devoted stepmother, making generous sacrifices, but she had never explained where the money was actually coming from. Now Madison was connecting dots that painted a very different picture. Dad arrived at the airport, then having decided to face the confrontation head-on rather than let Mom control the narrative any longer. The moment Madison saw him, her confusion became evident. "Dad, what is really going on?" she asked. "Mom is telling me one thing, but these legal papers I keep hearing about suggest something completely different." Dad looked at this girl who had unknowingly been the center of our family's destruction, and I could see his heart breaking for her. Madison had never asked to be used as a weapon against me, and she was about to learn that everything she thought she knew about her opportunities was built on lies. "Madison, we need to have an honest conversation," Dad said gently. "Your mother has been taking money that was saved for Aurora's education and using it to pay for your art program, your supplies, and your other expenses. She also took out a second mortgage on our house without my knowledge to pay for your studio space." Madison stared at him in shock, then turned to Mom for denial. But Mom's guilty expression told the story better than any confession could. "That is not true," Madison whispered, but her voice lacked conviction. Dad pulled out his phone and showed Madison the bank statements that detailed every transaction. The art supplies, purchases, the Italy program payment, the studio rental fees, the car loan for her vehicle. Every single expense was documented and traceable to money that had been designated for my education. $15,000 for Italy, $8,000 for your camera equipment, $12,000 for private lessons, $4,000 per month for studio rent. Madison, where did you think all this money was coming from? Dad asked quietly. Madison's face crumpled as she realized the magnitude of what had been done in her name. "I thought, Mom said you guys were just really supportive of my art. I thought these were normal family expenses." "They would have been normal if we could afford them," Dad said. "But your mother chose to steal from Aurora's future to give you opportunities we could not actually provide." Mom finally exploded. "You are turning my daughter against me!" She screamed at Dad, causing everyone in the airport to stare. "Madison, do not listen to him. He is jealous because I love you and support your dreams." "By stealing from Aurora." Madison shot back her artistic sensitivity, making her particularly horrified by the injustice. "Mom, I would never have accepted any of this if I knew it was coming from someone else's college money. How could you do that to her?" The confrontation moved to the parking garage, where Mom continued to defend her actions, while Madison grew increasingly disgusted. I followed at a distance, recording everything on my phone for Patricia to use in court. "Aurora has plenty of opportunities," Mom argued desperately. "She got into Stanford on her own merit. Madison needed extra help because artistic careers are harder to establish." "So you decided to rob Aurora to help Madison?" Dad asked incredulously. "You stole $40,000 from your own daughter's college fund and forged my signature on mortgage documents. Those are felonies, Helen." Madison was crying now, understanding fully how her beloved stepmother had betrayed the entire family to create opportunities for her. "I have to give it all back," she said. "The car, the equipment, everything. Aurora, I am so sorry. I had no idea." But Mom was not done fighting. "Madison, you do not understand the whole situation," she said, grabbing her stepdaughter's arm. "Aurora has been poisoning your father against us. She is jealous of our relationship and wants to destroy our family." "What family?" Madison asked bitterly. "A family built on stolen money and lies, Mom. You made me an accessory to theft. Do you understand that?" The final blow came when Patricia arrived with additional documents she had discovered. Mom's laptop had revealed even more damaging evidence emails to art dealers discussing selling some of Dad's valuable architectural models to fund additional expenses for Madison, and communications with a realtor about selling our family home after the divorce to relocate with Madison to California. "She was planning to liquidate everything your father built over 25 years, Patricia explained to Madison. "Your college fund, your father's business assets, even family heirlooms. All of it was going to be converted to cash to fund your artistic career in a different state." Madison stared at the documents in horror. "You were planning to uproot my entire life too. What about my friends, my art connections here in Phoenix?" "I was thinking about your future," Mom said weakly, but the justification sounded hollow even to her. "You were thinking about running away after stealing everything," Madison corrected. "Mom, I cannot believe you did this, any of this." The drive home was silent except for Madison's quiet crying in the back seat. When we arrived at our house, she immediately started packing up the art supplies that had been purchased with my college fund, insisting that everything needed to be returned or sold to repay the stolen money. "I cannot keep any of this," she said firmly. "Every brush, every canvas, every piece of equipment reminds me that it was bought with money taken from Aurora's education." That night, Madison called her biological father and asked to stay with him until she could figure out her next steps. Mom's fantasy of being Madison's devoted mother was crumbling as quickly as her marriage and her reputation. "I never want to see you again," Madison told Mom before leaving. You destroyed Aurora's trust, Dad's marriage, and my integrity all at once. I will never forgive you for making me part of your fraud." The next few weeks were a whirlwind of legal proceedings and devastating revelations that completely destroyed Mom's carefully constructed image. Patricia had built such a solid case that Mom's lawyer Rick Donovan recommended she accept a plea deal rather than risk a jury trial that would result in serious prison time. The criminal fraud charges were just the beginning. The forensic accountant had uncovered additional financial crimes that even we had not known about. Mom had been claiming Madison as a dependent on her taxes, while Madison's biological father was also claiming her, resulting in tax fraud. She had opened credit cards in Dad's name without permission to fund Madison's expenses, adding identity theft to her growing list of crimes. "The prosecution is offering a deal," Patricia explained during our meeting at her office. "Helen pleads guilty to fraud, identity theft, and tax evasion. She serves 18 months in minimum security prison, pays full restitution of $120,000, and forfeits any claim to marital assets in the divorce." Dad and I looked at each other in amazement. Mom's greed had been even worse than we realized. "120,000?" I asked. "We thought it was 90,000. The additional 30,000 covers the fraudulent tax returns, interest, and penalties on the stolen funds and damages for emotional distress," Patricia explained. "Plus, Helen will have to sell her car, her jewelry, and liquidate her retirement account to begin paying restitution immediately." But Mom was not going down quietly. Her desperation led her to make increasingly erratic decisions that only made her situation worse. She hired a private investigator to dig up dirt on Dad and me, hoping to find something she could use to discredit our testimony. When that failed, she started calling my professors at Stanford, claiming I was having a family crisis that was affecting my mental health and academic performance. "Your mother contacted the dean of students," my advisor Dr. Richardson told me during a phone call. "She claimed you were being manipulated by your father in an abusive situation and suggested the university should intervene to protect you." The irony was stunning. The woman who had emotionally abandoned me for years was now trying to weaponize my university against me. Dad's colleagues at his architectural firm were receiving similar calls. Mom contacted his biggest client, spinning a story about Dad being an unstable husband who was vindictively destroying his family through false accusations. She hoped to damage his professional reputation enough that he would be forced to drop the charges to save his career. Instead, her harassment campaign backfired spectacularly. Dad's clients had known our family for years, and they remembered how Mom had gradually stopped attending company events, choosing instead to showcase Madison at art galleries while I became invisible. Her desperate attempts to destroy Dad's reputation only reinforced their belief that the fraud charges were legitimate. The most damaging incident occurred when Mom tried to convince Madison to change her testimony. Madison had been subpoenaed to testify about her knowledge of the family's finances, and Mom was terrified that Madison's honest testimony would seal her fate in court. "You have to tell them that Aurora is lying," Mom begged Madison during a recorded phone call that Madison later provided to Patricia. "Say that your father and I always discussed these expenses together. Say that Aurora was jealous and tried to turn everyone against us." "But that would be perjury," Madison replied, her voice cold with disgust. "Mom, I am not going to prison to cover up your crimes." "Madison, I did this for you," Mom cried. "Everything I did was to give you the opportunities you deserved." "You did this to me, not for me," Madison corrected. "You made me an unwilling accomplice to theft, and now you want me to become an accomplice to perjury too. I will not destroy my integrity to save you from the consequences of your choices." That recorded conversation became crucial evidence in the criminal case. Mom had essentially admitted to the fraud while simultaneously attempting to suborn perjury from a key witness. Meanwhile, our house had become a crime scene of sorts as Patricia's team inventoried all the items that needed to be sold to pay restitution. Madison's art studio was dismantled piece by piece, with each item photographed and appraised for liquidation. The expensive easel, the professional lighting, the imported canvases, the high-end brushes and paints, everything had to go. "This hurts me more than it hurts her," Madison told me as we watched the appraiser's work. These tools were going to help me build a career, but I cannot touch anything that was bought with your stolen money." I felt genuinely sorry for Madison. She had been used as brutally as I had, just in a different way. Mom had manipulated her artistic dreams to justify theft, making Madison believe she was deserving of opportunities that were actually being stolen from me. The custody of Madison became another battleground. Although she was 17 and could choose where to live, Mom fought desperately to maintain some legal claim to her stepdaughter. She argued that Madison needed her guidance and support during this difficult transition period. Helen's attachment to Madison is pathological, the court-appointed psychologist reported after evaluating our family dynamic. She has used Madison as a replacement for the daughter she feels she lost when Aurora became independent. The financial fraud appears to be rooted in Helen's desperate need to prove herself as Madison's primary parental figure. Madison chose to live with her biological father, permanently cutting all contact with Mom except through lawyers. The girl who had been the center of Mom's world for 3 years was gone, leaving Mom completely alone with the consequences of her crimes. The final humiliation came when Mom's book club friends, the same women who had witnessed her being served with divorce papers, started a neighborhood whisper campaign about the fraud charges. Mom could not go to the grocery store or the gas station without people staring and whispering about the woman who had stolen her own daughter's college fund to spoil her stepdaughter. "I saw Helen at Target yesterday," one of Dad's co-workers mentioned. "She looked like she had aged 10 years in 2 months. Word around the neighborhood is that she is selling everything she owns to pay back the money she stole." Dad felt no satisfaction in Mom's public humiliation, but I have to admit that I did. For 3 years I had watched this woman treat me like an unwelcome guest in my own home while lavishing attention and resources on Madison. Now everyone in our community knew exactly what kind of person she really was. The preliminary hearing was scheduled for the following month, where Mom would have to formally enter her plea and begin the process of losing everything she had worked her entire life to build. But we were about to discover that her punishment was far from over. The day of Mom's sentencing was bitter cold for Phoenix, which felt appropriate for the occasion. Patricia had warned us that Mom was likely to make a final desperate attempt to avoid prison time, possibly by trying to paint herself as a victim of manipulation or mental illness. Instead, what happened in that courtroom exceeded our wildest expectations for justice. Mom arrived looking haggard and defeated, having clearly aged years in just a few months. Rick Donovan, her sleazy lawyer, had apparently prepared a speech about how Mom was a devoted stepmother who had made errors in judgment while trying to support a gifted child. But before he could deliver his prepared remarks, the prosecutor stood up with new evidence that Patricia had helped uncover. "Your Honor, we have discovered additional victims of the defendant's fraud," the prosecutor announced. "Helena Morrison has been running similar schemes for the past 5 years, targeting families in her real estate business." My jaw dropped. Patricia had suspected that Mom's fraud was more extensive than just our family, but this was beyond anything we had imagined. The prosecutor continued, "The defendant used her position as a real estate agent to gain access to clients' financial information, then used that information to apply for credit cards and loans in their names. She has defrauded at least 12 families out of a combined total of $300,000. Mom had been running a sophisticated identity theft operation for years, using her legitimate real estate business as cover to steal from families who trusted her with their financial information. The money she had stolen from other families had also been used to fund Madison's artistic pursuits, meaning the art supplies and opportunities were built on even more victims than we had realized. Furthermore," the prosecutor added, "the defendant attempted to flee the country yesterday using fraudulent identification documents. She was arrested at Sky Harbor Airport with a fake passport and tickets to Brazil, a country with no extradition treaty for financial crimes." The courtroom erupted. Mom had apparently liquidated every asset she could access and attempted to escape to South America, abandoning Madison and leaving Dad to face the financial ruin she had created. Only a tip from one of her victims, who had seen her at the airport, had prevented her from successfully fleeing the country. Judge Patricia Williams looked at Mom with undisguised disgust. Ms. Morrison, you have betrayed not only your own family, but dozens of innocent people who trusted you with their most sensitive financial information. Your attempt to flee the country shows complete lack of remorse for your crimes. Rick Donovan tried weakly to argue that Mom was suffering from a mental breakdown, but the evidence of premeditation was overwhelming. The fake passport had been ordered months in advance. The Brazilian bank account had been established using another victim's Social Security number. Mom had been planning her escape long before we had even discovered her initial fraud. "I sentence you to 8 years in federal prison," Judge Williams announced. "You will serve a minimum of 6 years before being eligible for parole. You will pay full restitution to all victims totaling $450,000, including interest and penalties. Your real estate license is permanently revoked, and you are barred from any position involving access to financial information." 8 years. Mom would be in her late 50s when she was released, with no career, no family, and a felony record that would follow her for the rest of her life. But the justice was not finished. Madison had been in the courtroom for the sentencing, and when she heard about the additional victims and the attempted escape, she stood up and asked to address the court. "Your Honor, I want to make a statement about how this fraud has affected me as well," Madison said, her voice clear and strong. Judge Williams nodded for her to continue. "For 3 years, I believed Helena Morrison was a loving stepmother who was supporting my artistic dreams. I now know that every opportunity I received was built on money stolen from Aurora and from dozens of other innocent families. I have nightmares knowing that my art supplies were purchased with money taken from someone else's children." Madison paused, looking directly at Mom for the first time since the hearing began. "But what hurts most is that Helena made me believe I was special, that I was deserving of these expensive opportunities, when the truth is that she was just using me as an excuse to steal. She did not love me enough to provide for me honestly. She loved the idea of playing mother to someone impressive more than she cared about any of us." The impact of Madison's words was devastating. Mom started crying, but they were not tears of remorse. They were tears of self-pity for losing the girl she had manipulated for so long. After the sentencing, Patricia explained that the restitution payments would begin immediately with the liquidation of all Mom's remaining assets. The house would be sold with Dad receiving his full equity share plus damages. Mom's retirement account's jewelry car and everything else of value would be seized to pay her victims. "Helena Morrison will leave prison with absolutely nothing," Patricia said with satisfaction. "No money, no home, no career prospects, and no family willing to support her." 6 months later, our lives had stabilized into a new normal that was infinitely better than the toxic dynamic Mom had created. Dad was thriving in his career, having been promoted to senior partner at his firm, partly due to the sympathy and respect his colleagues felt for how he had handled the crisis. I was back at Stanford finishing my graduate program, fully funded by the restitution payments and scholarships I had earned based on my academic achievements. The college fund that Mom had stolen was completely restored with interest. Madison was living with her biological father and flourishing in ways she never had under Mom's manipulative support. Without the pressure of being someone's replacement daughter, she was creating art that came from genuine inspiration rather than obligation. She had even earned a legitimate scholarship to art school based on her own merit. "I am a better artist now that I know my opportunities are earned, not stolen," Madison told me during one of our monthly coffee meetings. We had grown closer through this trauma bonding over our shared experience of being manipulated by the same woman. Dad started dating again recently, and his new girlfriend Sarah treats me like an adult daughter rather than competition for his attention. The contrast with Mom's behavior could not be more stark. As I finish telling you this story, I want you to think about the families in your own life. Have you ever witnessed someone being replaced or sidelined for someone new? Have you seen parents who play favorites or sacrifice one child for another? How do you think family loyalty should work when someone betrays the people who are supposed to matter most? Let me know in the comments what you think about Mom's punishment. Was 8 years enough for what she did to our family and all those other victims? And if you have your own family justice stories, I would love to hear them. please hit that like button if you think karma finally caught up with Mom the way it should have, and subscribe for more real family drama stories. Share this with anyone who needs to hear that sometimes the people who betray you end up facing consequences that are bigger than anything you could have planned yourself. Thank you for listening to my story about how my mother's favoritism and fraud ultimately led to the most complete justice I could have imagined. Life has a way of balancing the scales when you stand up for what is right, even when it means going against family. I hope my experience reminds you that blood relationships do not excuse betrayal, and sometimes the family you choose treats you better than the family you were born into.